Good morning. Won't you just take a moment and turn around and wave at somebody and say good morning, welcome, hi, hello. That's wonderful. Now your faces are all shining bright and it's beautiful to look at. And it relates to our topic. This is the last Sunday of the year, so it is the completion of our year-long program celebrating 100 years of our teaching, The Science of Mind, the public teaching, which started with our founder's book, Creative Mind, published in 1918. And we've been going through the whole year exploring that with a different focus each month. This month, our focus is happiness and fulfillment. And today we're talking about happiness. And so it's proper, I think, to talk about Gretchen Rubin, who is one of the most influential, one of the most thought-provoking writers on the topic of happiness. You can read her blog and her articles, quite lovely. On her blog, she sometimes interviews other authors. Once she interviewed the author and photographer Kelly Hampton. Kelly wrote a book of her own. It's called Bloom. And it's about her experience of the first year of her daughter's life, Nella. Nella was born with Down syndrome, and the book talks about Kelly's experience, her changing perspectives and her changing expectations as she moved through raising that child. The subtitle of that book, Bloom, is Finding Beauty in the Unexpected. That's correct. So in the interview, Gretchen asks Kelly, what's something you know now about happiness that you didn't know when you were 18 years old? Oh, that's a good question. Isn't that excellent? I mean, well, especially since we're approaching a new year, you could ask yourself, what is it that I now know about happiness that I didn't know last year? Oh, the room went quiet. Kelly answered it like this. I now know that I am 100% responsible for my own happiness. It is a state of mind that is cultivated by my own choices and habits, not things or people. Yes, my children make me happy. Yes, sitting at the beach and watching a sunset makes me feel happy. But I cannot rely on other people and my environment to make me happy. I don't ever want to make the mistake of thinking my happiness is dependent on something, a different job, more money, another child, wood floors, a remodeled bathroom, etc. Well, that gives us our first point in our discussion about happiness, and it is this. Happiness is not entirely dependent on externals. Now, our own Science of Mind teaching would say something similar. It would say, yeah, externals like people, things, situations, no, your happiness is not dependent on, and our teaching would say, and your happiness is entirely dependent on what you think about people, situations, and things. In other words, the way we interpret the world has something to do with our happiness, even the difficult situations in life. We're not trying to sidestep difficulties or paint a pretty picture of the world. No, really, all of life, how we interpret all of life has something to do with our experience of happiness. Indeed, in our book of the month, the Book of Joy, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, on page 245, it says, joy is the happiness that does not depend on what happens. It is the grateful response to the opportunity that life offers you in the moment. So that's another good point. It should go up on that slide. You know, that's wonderful. Happiness has got something to do with gratitude. So make a mental note to insert it as your own second point. Back to the interview. Gretchen asks, is there anything you find yourself doing repeatedly that gets in the way of your happiness? Oh my goodness. Now that's a good question. Oh, is there anything? Imagine you were being interviewed. How would you answer that? Is there anything you find yourself doing repeatedly that gets in the way of your happiness? Here's Kelly's answer. She says, whenever I compare myself with others, my happiness takes a shot in the back. Yeah, I get it. Our own science of mind teaching would have something to say about that in this way. Negative self-talk, especially in destructive comparison in that form, negative self-talk can be problematic. Because negative self-talk is creative, but in a bad way. So what you say to yourself does matter. It matters. I'm so excited about the class I'm teaching next year on affirmations. The subtitle is, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's about taking the inner language that we let run wild inside of us and then reframing it into more helpful, more supportive language so that we can be kinder to ourselves. And what's nice about this class and many of the other classes is you can take it in class or from the comfort of your home online. And it just so happens that today is the last day of the early bird registration discounts. And that's another point that should be up there. Happiness is connected to discounts. No, maybe. Okay, but back to the interview. Gretchen asks, have you ever been surprised that something you expected would make you very happy didn't, and vice versa? Oh, wow. I was reviewing this past year. Were there any surprises? Yeah. Kelly answers, when I was 18, I signed up to be a summer camp counselor at a pediatric cancer camp. I expected it would be nothing but heartbreaking, that I would be overwhelmed with pity and sadness, but I thought it would be good for me and I wanted to help. At orientation, I was given my counselor pack, which included my camp t-shirt, and the screen print on the back read, Camp Catch a Rainbow, the happiest place on earth. And it was. There was an incredible freedom at that camp to just be. In the midst of everything these kids had gone through, sickness, hospital stays, hair loss, they came to camp because they wanted to have fun. They talked about their illness with such honesty and courage, it made me evaluate my own life and what I had to learn. And then she goes on to explain how she kept on going back. For 4 years, every summer she signed up to go to camp because she started to crave what she found there. The happiness, the dancing, the stories, the authenticity, and the laughter. When she left camp, she felt empowered, happier, better. She goes on with her answer. 10 years later, my own personal experience of welcoming my second daughter mirrored those first camp feelings. Certainly, raising a child with Down syndrome was something I was worried about. I thought it would be devastating, but I was wrong. Sometimes happiness can be found in the most unlikely experiences. And once again, I'm reminded that happiness is not determined by things or people, but by choices and habits. And I'm choosing to be happy. There's our next point. I love that. First of all, I forgot comparison steals this one. Happiness can also be found in unlikely experiences. Our own science of mind teaching would say it this way, using the words of St. Francis, for example, where there is sadness, we are the ones who bring joy. Where there is despair, we are the ones to bring hope. We are the change factor through what we consciously nurture inwardly. So you could say, it is our consciousness that reveals the hidden splendor. So in this new year that is coming, we might be asking ourselves, where do I think my happiness will be found in 2019? Maybe if I win the lotto. complicated. Again, it went quiet. It's something to think about, isn't it? On CNN Health, that magazine, online magazine, there's an article about lotto winners. And the article reminds us that it can be fun to think about, to fantasize about what would I do if I won the lotto. That can be a fun exercise in visualization. And the article points out that in reality, some lotto winners have quite difficult experiences of it. There's this one story of a young mother of 3 children who said that she just wished she could change her name and go somewhere on the planet where nobody knew her and just hide. That's how bad it was. And then another family, a Washington State man, said that all they encountered were predators so bad that they couldn't even leave their home until they hired police protection. Well, not all lotto winning stories work out poorly. It just makes a good point. Here's the point. Happiness and sadness are possible with or without wealth. Well, now that that's cleared up. See, our Science of Mind teaching would probably say it something like this as an affirmation: I am not controlled by conditions. I am not influenced by conditions. I influence conditions by what lives in me, by what is alive in me. And the mind of creation is within me. The love and the power and the creativity of the living universe is in me. And I get to bring that to life everywhere I go. I am the change factor. Again, let's ask that question. Where do I think my happiness is going to come from in 2019? Well, in our culture, we live in a very modern world, very developed, and if we look at all of the advertising around us, it will tell us where our happiness is hidden. It's very clear. Well, let me introduce you to the Happier Planet Index. It's a study that shows that wealthy Western countries, often seen as the standard for success across the world, well, they don't rank very highly when it comes to happiness on the Happier Planet Index. Now, you can go look up the Happier Planet Index and see how they get their results. It's still there. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, instead, several countries in, like, for example, Latin America and Asia-Pacific region, they're leading the way with well-being and happiness, even though they have a much smaller ecological footprint on the planet. And it turns out that countries with the highest gross domestic product rate the lowest on the happiness index. Out of the major nations studied, the 3 largest ones, United States, India, and China, all, by the way, aggressively pursuing growth-based development models, aggressively, and all have decreasing happiness indexes. Oh, well, there's our next point. What you pursue, what you chase, what you hunt down may have something to do with your happiness. So, what do you plan to chase in 2019? What are you planning to pursue? Because apparently what some nations are aggressively pursuing is apparently not leading to happiness. It's a clue. Oh, I love the verb to pursue. Because it can also mean to practice. It can also mean to engage in. It can even mean to discuss or to investigate or to explore. I like that. So instead of saying I'm pursuing happiness, I could say I'm practicing happiness. I could say I'm consciously engaging in happiness. I'm investigating it, I'm exploring it, I'm discussing, and I like that better than saying I'm chasing happiness, because I notice that when I chase something, it runs away. The activity of chasing, it takes me out of the present moment. It's reaching. Whereas the activity of practicing is all about being here, being present with what is in front of me. Oh, here's a lovely question for 2019 preparation. What prevents me from being present? What do I allow to distract me from being available to the here and now? I went for a doctor's appointment a couple months ago, and I went into the waiting room in the medical office, and it was filled up with people, and they were all looking at their phone. And very soon I was too. But I looked up, but the faces, not happy. Not happy. Except for one little girl. Very animated and alive and happy. No cell phone. She had a doll that she was talking to in quite an intimate and active way. It was just wonderful. She had brought like a bubble of happiness right into this very serious environment. And she had done it with her imagination, you know. And I imagined that her reality felt quite different to mine. It was beautiful to watch, you know. I mean, don't you ever wonder what we used to do before we had cell phones? How did we wait? How did we eat? How did we go to sleep? How did we wake up? And did we talk? Was that a thing? Did we used to talk? Another blogger, Rachel Macy Stafford, you're going to like her. Her blog is Hands-Free Mama. So you know what her perspective is. She writes about so many beautiful things. She wrote about one of her favorite activities as a child when on vacation at the beach. She just loved rescuing live starfish that had washed up on the beach. She just couldn't stand the thought that they would be stranded there and dry out and die. So no matter how long it took her on her vacation, that was her thing. She would roam around, find the stranded starfish, and return them back to the water. That was her thing. And she writes, somewhere along the line, I stopped saving starfish. Actually, she writes, I can pinpoint exactly when it happened. My highly distracted years. When to-do lists took over. When the pace of my life was a constant mad dash to a finish line that could never be reached. When I gripped my devices tighter than the hands of my loved ones. When I said yes to everything requested of me outside the home and said no to the most important tasks inside the home, like playing, laughing, making memories. And then she notes that as an adult, on vacation, things changed. Even though she was at the beach, she was focused on other things now, to-do lists. Fitbit, counting, got to get enough steps in. Got to be ready for whatever's on the agenda when she gets back. So she had become so driven by daily life that she had stopped enjoying the journey and she had stopped noticing stranded starfish. I remember, she writes, the day I noticed a stranded starfish again for the first time in many years. It was right in that time that I was in the process of waking up from my distracted state and slowly taking steps to reduce the daily distractions that were consuming my life. As I ran along the flat sand, something caught my eye in a tide pool. At first, I kept running, but I just couldn't keep going. I had to go back. Peering into the stagnant water, I saw a small starfish that was missing a limb. It appeared to be dead, but I felt compelled to wade in to be certain. Oddly, my inner perfectionist didn't even balk at the fact that I had to get my new running shoes wet to reach the creature. With urgency, I reached into the water and pulled it out. I turned the starfish over, expecting to see no movement. But amazingly, its tiny tube feet waved at me. I surmised that the poor starfish had been the partial snack of a predator. Despite missing a part, it was alive and was fighting to survive. Breathe, I whispered to the broken starfish, breathe. And suddenly it occurred to me that tears were dripping down my face. I was not really talking to the starfish. I was talking to myself. Because living a chaotic, overscheduled existence meant I had become too busy to breathe, and I was tired. Oh, so very tired of holding my breath. Rescuing a stranded starfish, like I did in the good old days, stirred up a deep desire in me to continue taking more small steps towards the calm, present, and gratitude-filled, hands-free life I wanted to live. Right then and there, it became crystal clear what I didn't want the rest of my life to feel like. And here are the thoughts that went through my head on that day, words that have become my daily prayer, my hands-free mantra, my vow to breathe. And here are the words she birthed in that moment. No longer do I want to feel like I'm always running late. No longer do I want to feel like I'll never catch up. No longer do I want to feel compelled to rush my children through life. No longer do I want to feel the brush of a hurried kiss on my husband's lips. No longer do I want to feel guilty when I sit down to rest. No longer do I want to feel depleted and empty. No longer do I want to feel like each day is a blur. No longer do I want to feel half alive. Instead, I vow to breathe. I vow to look my children in the eyes and step into their world. I vow to remember what my heart loves to do and then stop making excuses. I vow to close my eyes in gratitude and open my eyes wide in wonder. I vow to have face-to-face, soul-to-soul connections with the ones who share my life. I vow to read a book, to dance in the rain, to say, take your time and mean it. I vow to give a good kiss, to leave a surprise note, to do absolutely nothing from time to time. I vow to rest, laugh, play, wait, dream, and breathe, so I can truly live. You and I have the right, the inalienable right, to pursue happiness, and by that I mean to practice it. And these vows may very well be a good example of how a person might practice happiness, especially now that we are approaching the beginning of a new year. Oh, I think it's a wonderful time to ask ourselves questions like, is there anything I can do less of? Is there anything I can do more of that will bring the joy that is in me into this world? And then, if necessary, maybe consider writing some vows of your very own. I invite you now to take a breath in with me and to exhale, letting your eyes close as we take a moment of prayer. And I invite each one of you in your own way to recognize that ground of all being, or that presence that some call the divine, the mind of creation, that which is everywhere present, eternal, immortal, that which is beyond names. And as we each recognize that, calling it our source, we identify with it. I identify myself with that which is everywhere present so that I may understand my life as being part of it, an expression of it, so that I may understand my mind as using its creative energy when I think and pray, and I accept this as being the truth of all living beings. And this leads me to a realization that there is a natural joy in me that is present like a silent witness, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. And through this prayer, then, I'm cleansing the lens of my perception so that I may interpret this life through this filter of radiant acceptance, blissful peace, joy. And doing so, I'm filled with a sense of completion and readiness. And so I release this word of prayer into that aspect of the divine that we call the law, as a reminder to refrain from effort or reaching or chasing or pursuing, and to rest instead in the gentle knowing that where I am, the full rich presence of the Holy One is. And together we say, and so it is. I invite you now to take a deep breath in, followed by a sigh like this.